Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Rings of Power. The number doesn't matter to you, but what does matter to you is that this is the review for the season 1 finale for Rings of Power. I'm here.
And our show is now called Rings of Power.
I call our show the Rings of Power.
Yep.
I was like thinking back. I was like, I said podcast of the rings, right?
Yeah, totally said that.
I said that. That's what I said. I was doing so well.
Yeah.
And I committed so hard.
You know what? It's the confidence that really
sells it.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, this is the official Rings of Power podcast.
Totally.
Cool. Good to know. That voice from the ether is Alexander Mitchell. If you can't already guess our dynamic after listening to us for this long, he knows a lot.
Yeah.
I think I know a lot. And this is Podcast of the Rings.
There we go. Nailed it.
Alex.
Yes.
How you doing?
I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I'm nervous to come into this episode.
That was me last week.
I know. I have so many mixed feelings about this finale. It's a wild ride.
Totally.
I think, I was not really feeling it the first time watching this as much.
Sure.
Second and third watches, I was like, okay, I'm seeing some of the things they're trying to go for, but it's like, I don't know. This episode is fraught with some issues for me. So.
God, that's interesting. I feel like, in the greater wide world web, people, some people really felt like they stuck the landing. Even our close friend Scott Rubin said he wished the entire series was like this episode, which is like
I'm so glad it wasn't.
Right, which is kind of mind blowing because he didn't really like it leading up to that point. Right, he thought it was very slow, and there were slow moments, and we can get into that. But then there's some people who just are feel vindicated that this was as bad as they thought it was, and they, I'm just saying those people that, there's people who feel that way.
See, I told you.
Exactly.
The show is terrible. It's
exactly.
like, no, they had not bad. They had a finale that I think was not as satisfying as I would have liked it to be. Not that everything had to be wrapped up nice and neatly, but I think the thing that you said, our friend Scott said, like, oh, I like this episode because the rest of the season felt slow. I think that, and we kind of touched on this maybe last episode, that's the main issue for me. And upon thinking about this episode and seeing it again, it's like the pacing of this show is kind of all over the place. There was so much that happened in this episode that it was like, oh, we're pumping the brakes, and then like in the finale, it's like all this stuff happens, and it feels so rushed.
Totally,
it feels very rushed, and you're like, wait, what? There were multiple times when I first watched this episode that I was like, wait, what is happening? And that's coming from someone who knows this stuff. Granted, there's original characters and things I don't know, but even with the main plot lines, I'm like, wait, what just happened? And then they're on to the next thing, and so. Why did we have this? Why did we have this all crammed into the finale? Like, just so much happened so fast that it was. I think it felt weird. It felt weird.
So I guess I'm a little bit on the other side. I think I was vindicated because I knew Halbrand was going to be, and I think they couldn't have put him in Eregion sooner, or else everyone would have known. I don't know that we could have had as much Eregion. We could, up until this point, have had. We could have seen Celebrimbor trying at a different in a different episode.
100%. Like, this is where I had such a problem with it. It's like you get the idea for the rings and the creation of the rings and like all this in one episode. And up until this point, what's Celebrimbor's just been like, I'm making a forge. like for the whole season.
Right. I think that's kind of being nitpicky if you ask me, because like I can understand why they felt the need to rush. I can understand why they felt the need to drag out some storylines. I guess it didn't. The pacing didn't bother me in certain areas. Like I saw people like complain, like, why did we spend so much time with the Harfoots?
That's fine.
It was fine.
Because where else are we going to spend it in this episode? Like, I mean, I guess you could have spent more time sort of having a better pacing with the ring stuff in Eregion in this episode, but then like you're not going to have a whole episode dedicated to that, and then you also want to devote time to the thing we'll get into later, which is the stranger. Like, because that's an important plot line, and they had to give some kind of resolution to this whole arc for this season. You know,
they had to, and you know what they did right with that character and that storyline is they had us going, who is this person? Who is this person?
Yes,
who is this person? And now, one of the things I mentioned early on is if they're going to really, you said it properly. They were not saying, by the way, one of these guys is Sauron. We were infusing that with a lot of things. And so if we're looking at it from like a new viewer's perspective, if they were questioning who Halbrand was this entire time, then we know he's the bad guy. Like we had to, first of all, going back, and I'm looking forward to, so the next episode we are going to do is going to be a full series recap. We're going to just talk about our overall feelings, where we think the next season is going to go, etc. But this is just dedicated to our feelings on the finale, to this episode, I should say. If you were to go back every episode, he literally says, I'm sorry about your brother. Like he says things that going backward, you can go, oh, this was Sauron the entire time, you know?
Well, yeah, I think there are, for someone who is aware of Sauron being a shapeshifter and knowing that he's going to be somewhere hidden and be, infiltrating the forces of good, I think there are subtle clues. And as we talked about,
well, that was the meta for that version of viewer.
Yes, exactly.
That's my point.
And there were, as we discussed many times, yes, there are arguments for Halbrand, and there are arguments for other characters potentially, and then there's arguments for what I thought, and which ended up not being true, was that Sauron/Anatar was just in Eregion. And when I really just wanted this when they panned over during the ring creation montage, and they had like a couple of the little elf apprentices, and smiths, yes. And there's the one lady like filing something. I'm like, maybe that's him. Maybe he didn't leave. Maybe Sauron has just changed form, and now he's gonna,
That's just silly.
It is, but there was a little bit of hope in my heart for my theory to be correct. But
the only thing, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think with that sort of looking back lens, it's interesting that, it's not just like the hints that we picked up on, like, okay, in Numenor, he's like, oh, I'm interested in smithing and all of these, and sort of, I have a dark past and all of this stuff. But the personal interactions, right, that he has with Galadriel, that in the dream sequence in this episode, they sort of touch upon, it sheds new light on those and adds some interesting dimensionality, which I enjoyed, to his character. But yeah, I think if you were a viewer with no knowledge, right, you're never going to suspect Halbrand is Sauron. There's really literally no reason to, because the only reason you're going to suspect him as Sauron is if you know stuff about Sauron.
Right.
Right. And I think the writers are aware of that, because what do we get at the very top of this episode? We come to serve you, Lord Sauron, right, to the stranger.
Right. And so, maybe that if you are a newer viewer, you go, oh, cool, that makes sense. Like you could buy it. I'm just trying to assume that there's a contingency of person that might have gone, oh yeah, totally. I'm just thinking that. What I do think was rushed, and I find it so hard to believe. Well, not so hard to believe, but this was the thing. We rushed Celebrimbor having absolutely no time, but Gladriel in all of a sudden in 2 seconds completely distrusts this person she trusted for a month, 2 months.
That is okay.
That's the hardest thing to believe.
I can believe her being suspicious when Celebrimbor sort of uses the words that she heard from Adar.
And that's when she first was. Yeah.
But here's the leap that if you're not paying attention, you just accept and don't question, but it doesn't really, in my mind, make sense. Right? She, because Celebrimbor says like, "Oh, Halbrand's been helping me. You know, he was the key, right?"
Right.
And then he says those words. And then Galadriel's response is not like, "Oh, what is going on? Like, let's try and figure this out." She immediately goes, "Was Halbrand with you when you like came up with that idea or whatever? Like, or did he say those words to you?" Like, why would she immediately suspect Halbrand?
Why would she immediately suspect Halbrand? She has no idea who Celebrimbor's been working with, or that they've been working to get. Like, you're totally right. It's an illogical jump.
He said that Celebrimbor's idea was the key to unlocking the dam, but also, like, Galadriel's never been to Eregion. Galadriel's never been to Eregion. She doesn't know anybody there. And so, in my mind, and this is, again, because my theory was Anatar is already there. Yeah, who are these other people? What if Sauron is in disguise, like, somewhere else? Like, why would you immediately suspect Halbrand? And the reason is because Halbrand's a main character. Like...
I mean, there's an argument to be made for that Celebrimbor was very dejected up until a point. And then the newest part is Galadriel and Halbrand being there. So I could see her maybe extrapolating from that like, what's the different key here? And he mentioned, but they bonded.
Exactly. They seem to trust each other, right?
So it's just, doesn't mean your friend or a loved one can't do a 180 or can't really and truly. We'll get into this more, but Sauron's a narcissist. He's completely gaslighting Galadriel. Mm-hmm. So, and there's things that disprove that and prove it. So, and I can't wait to get into it. But she would never have. That makes her unreliable.
It's there is some level of, and this is where I'm talking about pacing stuff, like. And
I'm agreeing with you. That's why I'm saying to see her immediately question Halbrand comes out of left field, even though we as an audience know it's happening, because, but at the same time, that's why I said earlier, we couldn't have seen her do it sooner because then we would have just known. And the betrayal that the showrunners and the creators wanted us to feel with it being Halbrand, the impact would have been different. And one of the things I was looking for, and I'm sorry, I think I cut you off from your idea, but one of the things I was looking for was, did the build up to this reveal either let us down or give us what we expected or exceed those expectations? For me, I was about on par with what I expected. I wasn't let down. I expected it, and I think it's a good heel turn, I think.
Here's where I don't agree with that. It felt weird because we didn't have any Halbrand in the previous episode. So we see Halbrand and Galadriel, and maybe upon, again, when we talk about the whole series, like rewatching episode 6, where we have a lot of Galadriel Halbrand bonding in those moments.
Yes, I think that will elucidate a lot more. Do you use the word that way, elucidate? Not really.
Means, like, reveal. Lighten. But I think it felt weird to me because we hadn't had any Halbrand last episode, except for him just going like, I want to stay here in the Southlands, right? Which clearly he didn't. And then all of a sudden to get him showing up, he's just fine. And I love when he walks into Celebrimbor's forge, and Celebrimbor's like, shouldn't you be resting? And then he just brushes the question off and is like, let me like tinker with your stuff and ask all these questions. He's just totally fine. So it felt weird for me. We didn't get any kind of like, he's ingratiating himself, all that stuff. Again, it just felt so fast to me.
Right.
That in one episode, he's wounded riding to Eregion, then he's healed in Eregion, and now he's like best buds with Celebrimbor, and they're making the rings. And then he gets revealed and found out by Galadriel.
Right.
And that's also we're only getting half the episode's runtime for that to happen because the other half we're spending with the Harfoots and the Stranger. So it's like not even like an hour of that. It's like 30 minutes of that. Plus juggling all of the other characters in Eregion, which I think I want to talk about the one who got the shortest end of the stick, or the spear in this case, his spear Aeglos, which we did get to see, which is cool. Gil-galad. I was so unsatisfied.
Could totally agree.
I liked that we get the skeptical take of him, right? Because again, in the books, Anatar just sort of shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm here to give knowledge and gifts." So it's a very different take than the show is doing, which I'm fine with. But Gil-galad specifically, and Elrond, when they were in Linden and Anatar came to them, they were like, "Nah, get out of here. This is weird. We don't trust you." So I liked that some of that was present, but again, we didn't get any Gil-galad and Halbrand interacting. So I was a little disappointed with that. But
I mean, there's a world where by not doing that, he could still be charmed by Halbrand in the future. It's possible just by not having met him.
I think that possibility is out the window because
Galadriel's not telling anybody.
Elrond knows or suspects, and
I know,
but
but they don't have like messengers going back and forth to each other all the time. They do, but I'm just saying, I don't think that that's what will happen, but it's a possibility.
Yeah,
I think we're jumping into territory where we should go. Let's start going blow by blow, and then we can elaborate on more of these thoughts. But I'm with you on the Gil-galad stuff. I felt super craving more for that. There's so much that I felt that I was craving. And the only other thing I'll say about the overall impression is that there was like dumb rumors. You know how people love to say, "Oh, this is going to be a 17-hour episode," or whatever. That someone had said this is going to be 2 hours. I would have sat down and watched a 2-hour episode. That's the last I'll say for the overarching beginning of our episode. Is I think 2 hours would have been fine. I would have wanted to see them slow motion drip the metal into like a pot. I could see that for hours. So
I would have even taken, honestly, if it wasn't 2 hours, if it was just an hour 30 and that extra 30 minutes was like put into Eregion, because I don't think we needed a whole extra half hour with the Harfoots and the Stranger, but
we definitely didn't.
But half an hour extra with Eregion and like making that stuff feel more like it naturally flowed, I would have loved.
I couldn't agree with you more. So the episode starts off with, we have 3 different plot lines that they're already wrapping up, or that they're intending to wrap up. One of the things we didn't realize until this episode is really Disa's Lady Macbeth monologue was so heated because it was their last scene.
Yes.
I didn't realize that at the time. I don't think anyone else did, but that was the last we were going to see of the dwarves this season.
That was their setup for what's Durin and Disa's arc and King Durin's arc in season 2, and it's going to be internal political struggles with the dwarves.
And we're going to see why the rings, even though they know that if they came from Halbrand, the dwarves should still have them. I know, where's he going to make the rings? And because...
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They have changed it. I know this is still talking overall.
They went backward.
It's relevant. Yeah, they went backward because the 3 were made last, canonically.
Right.
Well, in the book.
Because the 9 and the 7, the 9 for men, 7 for dwarves, were made in Eregion with Anatar and Celebrimbor.
Yes. And I think, I'm not sure about this, and please correct me out there. I believe they were not like made with the intention like, oh, these 9 are going to be for men, and oh, these 9 are going to be for dwarves. I think they were originally all supposed to like be for elves, but then when the deception and everything came, and then things changed because Sauron was like giving the rings out.
Oh,
so,
I see. Okay, that's interesting.
But yes, in the books, the 9 and the 7 were
made prior to
made
the
originally, and then Celebrimbor in secret, or I guess with other elves maybe, made the 3.
God, and I maybe we just talk about whatever we want, because this should be untouched by Anatar Sauron. That's like what the whole conceit was. But the man touched the mithril.
Well, I'm fine with. He did not have a hand in making the 3. So he again, this is the nature of them compressing everything. He showed them how to do the ring stuff, and then before they actually sat down and did everything to make the 3, he was no longer involved. So it's fine, I think, from that. Like he wasn't there like helping forge, he wasn't even there when they melted down the gold and the silver. So he never touched, I guess technically he touched the dagger, but
I'm just saying
he never touched any of the stuff that was made to use those rings.
That's
so
not
he wasn't
true. He was there. He's been in that workshop for weeks. He could have touched everything.
Well, yes, I'm saying that was directly being put into and like used to make the 3. They were never touched by him.
It's just a stretch. That's all.
Again, and this is because of the compression, right? That it's weird. And it's an interesting choice to put the 3 up front, and I get why they're doing it, because it makes a big, cool finale, and the 9 and the 7 get made, and it's kind of like, well, so what? Who are they going to go to? We have these main characters who are going to get the 3, so it makes sense, I think, from an adaptation standpoint, to do the 3 first.
Oh, sure, yeah, it doesn't bother me so much, but thinking about it, I'm sure there will be a bunch of junk rings that Halbrand makes in trying to recreate the forge he saw at Eregion. I think that's probably what we're going to see, is him create a tower. I mean, I'm trying to understand where and how he's going to make the rings. Right. Who does he coerce to get mithril? If he thinks, like, does he need mithril?
It's weird, and that's another reason why I think it's they're going to have to change a lot to like make it work with the 3 being made first, because where is he gonna so the whole mithril thing, like the only reason that they put, because the way they're changing this is the rings are there and being made by the elves because they believe, and I'm still camp, the elves' souls are fine. I think that's all a load of BS from Sauron. But it's, again, he's manipulating their fear, like Halbrand said. That's the only reason mithril is needed in those rings, or quote unquote needed, right? Now, I'm not sure if they're kind of implying that all magic rings need mithril, and then Sauron is just giving the elves another reason to want to use the mithril, right? So that they're putting it in there, and that's how he kind of like tricks them into making the rings. Or is it going to be possible for him to make magic rings, or Celebrimbor to make more magic rings without more mithril? So,
do we ever know what is in the rings prior to the show? Is it ever clear what's in those?
No.
Rings?
We know that Nenya, the Ring of Adamant, is made of mithril, specifically. But that's it. Okay. There is no connection in the books between like mithril being a necessity for magic rings.
I think when he says someone was saying he was looking for the missing part, the missing component for the power of overflesh, it's mithril. It's mithril, because
that seems to me to be correct.
It will heal the elves just by them having the power of it. I think who's to say I think it's not a bad stretch of the imagination that by having those rings, the elves have a power of keeping that the elves have a power of keeping themselves healthy because they have meat. I just think it's not a crazy leap of I'm not making sense.
No, you are. I just don't agree.
Okay.
I clearly, the 3 elven rings, their power is in preservation and healing and those kinds of things. We know that, or at least from the books. So in a world where they were corrupted, their souls were corrupted, like Gil-galad believes, then sure, they could do that. Do I think that's actually what's happening? No.
Of course it is, because that's what he's saying. The mithril is what gives him power over flesh. So it gives them the power to heal the flesh.
I agree. I don't think the flesh needs healing. I think that's a deception by Sauron.
I see.
To get them to make the rings.
I see.
Because here's the thing, like, does Sauron have the power to corrupt every single elf soul on Arda? I don't think he does. And I don't think it's something the Valar did. And if he does have the power to corrupt every elf soul, I mean, geez, that's cool. I guess it's a win-win for him then. Either the elves all die or they leave and he's happy, or they make the rings and he gets what he wants, right? So I think it's a deception. Sure. I don't think they needed to make the rings in order to save themselves, and if they did, I would be disappointed. I think it will be revealed that wasn't the case. I hope so, at least.
But that he wanted them to have the ring so that he could have power over them. But he never said make a ring. He said we're going to make 2 small things.
Yes.
Babe.
Well, and
basically
I think
proposing. He basically was proposing. He was like, hey, so there's 2 rings, and I'm going to wear one, and you're going to wear one, and you know.
Yes. And I think that was his plan, which I think is interesting because that brings up another question of Sauron's motivations, right? He was thinking crowns, right? Because Celebrimbor said crowns, and then he was like, yeah, cool, we'll make these crowns, right? And he only wanted 2 of them. So that would be the idea, in at least I think the implication, especially the way he says it, we need to make 2. We're making 2 of them. Like, he repeats that to Galadriel as like kind of a, oh, hey, there's 2 of us here. What's going on? So that is something that I question here. What is Sauron's motivation for these things to be made? Is he just trying to use the elves and Celebrimbor and his knowledge to get these things, right? Because he's like, well, I'm not good enough, but Celebrimbor is, and I kind of discovered the secret, but I need him and his skills, right? And then he'll make the things, and then Galadriel and I will have them, and we'll have power. Because that's the whole 2 thing. Or is he planning on doing the whole thing from the books, which is the ring thing of get the rings in the hand of the power, in the hands and the head of the powerful, if it's a crown, I guess the head, and then I'll make the one and boom. Because then that would lead me to believe, like, why would you only want 2? Why wouldn't you want 3? Why wouldn't you want more? Because then you're going to have control of more elves and more powerful elves.
I don't think he thinks that he's going to need control yet. I think he just thinks that will give him control. I think he thinks that the forging of whatever they end up making will give him control, and I think he'll learn that he needs them to have rings in order to have the control.
And that's where they're changing a lot about Sauron here, is because that he wasn't just winging it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sauron had this plan devised from the moment he was Anatar and came going like, hey, I know how to like make magic rings and stuff. You guys want to, you know, he already knew. He already knew, like, and then I'm going to get you with the one. Like, Sauron is a master planner. He thinks long term. He thinks long scale, right? That's his whole thing. So I think that's a big change if that's what they're going for, is that he's kind of just like winging it, and he doesn't know already that he's going to eventually make the one ring. That's kind of a big change to me. So that was, it was interesting to see that conversation where he goes, oh, we're making 2 of them.
I know. Which I can't wait to, there's so much to unpack in that whole sequence, which I actually think was very good. But let's wrap up the Numenorian story. Finally, Tar Palantir dies, but not before he makes Aarion. Is that her name? I always forget it.
Yes, Aarion.
Aarion, basically Muriel accuses her of. Aarion gets to draw the visage of Tar Palantir before he dies, and we get to see some of Pharazon's future motivation to why he might be foiled by Halbrand in the future, which is the want, which you had taught me, which is the want for everlasting life, or immortality.
This is the beginning of kind of
his fear of death.
The deepening of the decline. He says they're going to build a tomb for Tar Palantir to give him immortality in stone. So this is part of the Akalabeth, where you have the beginning of building monuments to kings that they didn't do before. And so we're getting even more of this theme of like trying to cheat death, and we're seeing our Pharazon play into that. And so,
well, he's not R yet. Okay.
Yes, so, fair. Just
because you always say that
Chancellor Pharazon. My
Chancellor
apologies.
Pharazon.
I'm just excited to see him take power.
Okay. So,
and we got to see Kemen for a second.
We did.
Just chilling in the background,
looking after his girl, getting this opportunity, and.
I'm so proud of you, babe. Go draw that dead king, or nearly dead king.
Go, babe. I got it. Wait, what if he got it for her? What if he I got you this opportunity? He might have.
I think that's 100% what's happening.
Okay, great. That's kind of what I think too. So anyway, Tar Palantir goes crazy right before he has a death rattle before he dies, or one moment, and tells Ariandel to go upstairs. Aarion to go upstairs and not look too long.
Well, he thinks he says, "I know what you've been doing in the dark of night," and we both were kind of like, and then he goes on to
call her Muriel
and be like, Numenor's in danger. We got to return to the old ways. Clearly, a conversation he has already had with Muriel that he's replaying, because he says. To Aarion that he looked too long in the Palantir and he can no longer tell past from present from future, and everything's kind of muddled. So he's reliving this memory thinking Aarion is Muriel. So we were both wondering, is the "I know what you've been doing in the dark of night" line like a brief moment of lucidity that he's saying to Aarion, because he does have foresight and maybe he knows what Aarion's been up to. She is in the inner circle, so to speak, of Pharazon with Kemen. So has she been like doing some Pharazonian things, or is this something like...
Or trying to blow up a ship? Because that's what Kemen did.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, clearly they're doing some things that are maybe uncouth. But, yeah, so I don't know, because if Tar Palantir had said that to Muriel previously, what's he referring to? I know what you've been doing in the dark of night.
It's kind of hard to imagine that's the case. But if he's talking to Aarion and then thinks he's talking to Muriel... That's really bad writing. You could make it clear. It's not bad writing. It's just not smooth.
Yeah. I was confused by the line.
They could have done it better. I do think though that's that's what I'm walking away with. He was talking to Aarion and then he thought he was talking to Muriel. I'm really interested to see. I mean, the moment of also, I don't believe this, is Aarion goes, "The king, he needs your help," and no one comes at all, and she gets to go up to the top of the where the Palantir is, and still no one finds her there.
She does have a line like, when she's wiping the corners of his mouth, which is weird. Like, your attendant or your handmaid is going to be back soon. So clearly this is like, the handmaid had just left the scene before we saw, and they have this moment alone so that this thing can happen.
I mean, they had moments alone because she gets to go upstairs.
Yes.
And no one's going, hello? There was someone here.
Yeah.
What's up there?
Like, what was the handmaid doing?
Yeah.
Why is there only one attending to the dying king? I guess because it's a secret that he's
I guess, but you know what? Let's have 17 apprentices draw his visage while also amazing our artisans get to do the same thing. Let's have 25 people know he's about to die, but that's it.
Well,
That's a lot of people.
It was like 4 or 5.
There were 7 people in that room, and then.
But that's like Farazan's.
But they're apprentices, and he's saying that they're getting the opportunity along with the artisans.
No. It's
yes.
They are drawing his visage,
right? And they're the apprentices that are allowed to do it as well, to see who will win. So there are some other undisclosed number of true artisans, people that are like well known that aren't apprentici anymore. So that's what he was saying. Will get a chance.
What he's saying is that the people in that room he has picked because they're faithful to him, pun not intended, because they're going to be Kingsmen. They are loyal to Farazan. He trusts them. They have talent that he sees, and so it's going to be a competition, basically. One of their drawings will be used by the artisans after Tar Palantir dies to build this monument. So the artisans he was referring to don't know.
Yes, they are. Yes.
No.
Yeah, he says you also will be able to throw your name in the hat. He does not say they're only going to do your guys' things.
Okay.
He legit says they will have the challenge of capturing his visage, and you as my apprentice have been selected as well.
No, he's talking to everybody in the room.
He literally says as well.
Okay. I guess I misinterpreted.
He literally says as well.
All right.
It's so neither here nor there.
Okay.
But they are not necessarily guaranteed that one of those apprentices will win it, and they're getting to basically he's giving them an opportunity alongside the artisans.
I didn't understand that.
That's fine. It's not important.
Well, no, it is, because it's weird then, because the whole Tar Palantir thing was supposed to be secret that he was dying.
It is weird, but also Muriel was the one that was keeping that secret.
But why would Farazan has his motivations.
Farazan has his own,
But the important thing, I guess, is that Aarion goes up into the tower when Tar Palantir opens the secret passage, sees all these relics. We get a cool look at some of the little Easter eggs in the background, and sees the Palantir, and then we don't see her for the rest of the episode. So
she dies.
Yep, and we won't see her for season 2.
I'm so
glad. Did she look into it? What did she do with that knowledge? That's clearly going to be a thing. So yeah, curious to see what happens with that. And then we do get a shot later. Well, I guess let's talk about move on to Elendil and Muriel.
Great.
Continuing the Numenorian stuff.
Great. Now, at the end of us talking about this, I think this is where we need to talk about Antimo, because this is where Antimo would be.
Okay.
As opposed to saving it for the end.
I like that, yeah, because we're gonna have a lot of thoughts on other things. Do you want to say what we've come? Well, we haven't come up with it.
We didn't come up with it.
No.
I think it was a group effort, but friend of the podcast, Brad Grenz, came up with "Onto Moment," and it was there. It was right on the tip of our tongue, and he found it.
You said "Onto Moment," but the portmanteau of it all.
The portmanteaument didn't happen yet. I think we were tired. We had gone over an hour longer than we thought we were going to.
Oh yeah.
I'm realizing this whole podcast can be as long as we want it to. We never stopped it from being the length that we wanted it to be. But all of a sudden, last week was almost 2 hours, and I was like, you know what, this is fine. But I think we were tired, and Onto Moment didn't come right to us. And thankfully, Brad Grenz found it. And it's the best. It's the best. So we will do the Onto Moment in a moment. So they're close, I guess. They're on the seas. We see Muriel dealing with the fact that she can't see and trying to
practicing
Is she practicing steps for like walking to the throne or like walking off the ship, or is it just she's practicing the steps of the ship?
I don't know nautical terms. Elendil says main post, so I don't know if that's a
That's probably
dock
it then.
thing. I would imagine that, yeah, she's just trying to figure out spacing of like her surroundings underneath deck or something. I really don't know.
But they're so close to home. I don't know why she's like, oh, let me find more time. Like, let me figure out how to walk this ship. but she's definitely, for someone who really loves wearing, you know, the bandana over her eyes, she does also want to walk around without stumbling. But she still is, but she also has a Elendil help her. So I don't know. She's sending mixed signals. What do you want, girl? Do you want to like look like you can walk without somebody's help, or do you need somebody's help? It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Right. I think both. I think she wants to be confident and look like she's not weak.
Right. And she's not. She's not
right.
trying to look like it. She isn't. She's fighting. She's surviving, and she is she's not letting it stop her. So
but
yeah,
I think it's important that because in her mind it's you know, the hearts of Numenor stand on, you know, a nice edge, especially after they learn about what has happened in Middle-earth. So she knows that even the slightest slip up when she gets back could potentially be disastrous for her.
I see.
So I think she's working through that of like, look, even if I stumble for a moment walking off the ship, that could be the opening that someone needs to say, look, this person is not fit to rule. So she is doing her best to make sure that doesn't happen.
I mean, let's completely cast aside to begin with that she had no business being on the ship to go to Middle-earth. She should have never gone. But whatever.
Palantir thought so.
He said you shouldn't go.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have gone. She's the queen. What are you doing? Anyway, but if she didn't go, we wouldn't have a new ship. The
Elendiriel. Ooh.
They fall in love.
Miradil?
Miradil. No,
Mirendil.
Mirendil. There it is. Mirendil. You heard it here, folks. They 100% fall in love. Like it's trauma bonding, but like I know I'm with you, and you know what? Let's go for it. We're going for it. This is what this section is about to me. This show is doing a wonderful job showing us love between men in a non-toxic way, like the movies did very well. And they're showing us love between a man and a woman in a non-romantic way, like with Elrond and Galadriel. Those relationships are reflecting real life relationships. They're important for us to see them reflected in our pop culture, because you were there when I was streaming and some guy was like, oh, this person that you do the podcast with, not talking about this podcast, by the way, because we hadn't done this yet, but someone's like, is that your brother or your boyfriend? And I'm like, oh yeah, because that's it. That's the only two situations that those men could be working with me. Is like, well, yeah, because you can't, there's always going to be some sort of attraction. So we need the people that need to see that aren't probably going to be the ones that are going to see it, but it's nice to have that reflected.
Yes.
And I think there was a mutual respect between Muriel and Elendil, and there were not sexually attracted or charged moments, but what they were talking about was what it takes to be the faithful and what it takes sacrifice-wise, whether they realize it or not. But he says, I'm going to make sure it's worth it. And then she braces him and is against him and allows herself to be weak and need him.
Yes.
And he allows himself to be a little vulnerable. And I think it's kind of sexy. I think if they choose to go that route, that's a little bit of a building block.
I hope they don't, because...
But doesn't that give him more credence to be the king then? And then the lineage of kings? If he marries Muriel?
He's never the king of Numenor.
Well, then how is Aragorn the heir of...
Because he's the heir to the kings of Gondor and Arnor.
Oh, because of they're the realms of exile.
Yeah. So when Numenor sinks, spoilers, the leader of
we
the
don't
faithful.
know at this point what they're going to do.
Yeah, Numenor's fine. It's just off there.
Yeah, we have no idea.
When they go and save the remaining faithful who leave because they see what's coming, because Elendil was a lord of Andunier and basically the leader of the faithful, or his father was, but his father's not in the show, so he's pretty much going to be the leader of the faithful, is what it's looking like. He then becomes the king. So
I think what they're doing, and it's smart, is setting up this relationship to further demonize and make the antagonist Alfarazon. Because if Alfarazon thinks he needs to marry Muriel, but she's actually in love with Elendil, but he forces him to marry her to marry him, I think that just gives another dimension. I don't hate it. I just don't hate it.
I don't... look, here's what I'll say. Lloyd Owens, sexy man, right? The Elendil. So I get it. We want to see him, doing
no
his
one's
thing.
pushing it, but sure, go for it. He says, "I have you."
It's. I can see how you can look at that and swoon a little bit, and go, "Ooh, okay." But I think, just like with the Galadriel Halbrand scene in episode 6, it's just them bonding and becoming close and having an intimate moment. But intimacy doesn't necessarily mean, like you're saying, it doesn't necessarily mean romantic tension. And so I think to then go the route of, and they fall in love and have a relationship, I think cheapens a little bit that bonding moment, because I just want to see these characters connect over stuff, and they don't need to be romantically involved. I don't need a romance subplot. And I think that's the other thing is there's already so much stuff in this show, and we already got Arondir and Bronwyn, right? We're gonna hopefully see Galadriel Celeborn. We have Arian Kemen. Who cares?
Whatever.
I hope they make me care. But we already have these romance subplots in the show. Don't make Elendil Muriel have a romance subplot, because we don't need it and it will bog the story down. And really what I want to see is them working through what it means to be the faithful. And that's their connection, not because they're in love. So I really hope they don't go that route. But I can see why some people might think it, because it's a moment of intimacy. And like you said, it's not often we see those kinds of relationships portrayed and they don't turn into romantic ones, which I think is not good. We should have more of that, because that's real life and those things are fine. So I hope it doesn't go that way. But I really loved their conversation. Elendil becoming vulnerable, showing that when he says my name doesn't just mean what is it? Blanking on
lover of the stars or something.
Yeah, lover or something of the stars, and he says it's elf friend too. So he's kind of coming out as an elf friend, which is a big deal in Numenor. And he, remember the conversation he and Muriel had first, where she's kind of laser focused, so what does your name mean? That's not its only translation. Not in a way of, I'm inviting you to become open about this, but she's kind of standoffish about it. So it's a big deal that he's coming out as this, and Muriel's working through these thoughts herself too. Because remember, she has this conflict with, my father's saying we need to return to the old ways, but the politician in me says that's a terrible idea and everything is going to come crashing down. But in my heart, I feel like that's the right thing to do, is to return to the old ways. And so this is kind of her solidifying, all right, I'm an elf friend too. I'm a faithful.
I see that. I can see that.
And I thought that was a cool twist, because I wasn't expecting that. I when she in the last episode is I'm, save your pity for our enemies. I was like, oh dang, she's gonna go full out all warfare on Middle Earth, and that seems like a very Kingsman idea, right?
Oh,
bringing
I think it
war to Middle
proves
Earth.
that she's totally pro elf. I thought that's what that proved to me.
Oh no, because in the books, one of the things that the Kingsmen do is all right, we're sending out fleets to conquer Middle Earth, and we're going to rule over everybody. That's a Kingsman type move. And so that's where I thought the direction they were going with Muriel. And then we get this scene with Elendil, and no, it's setting up this different thing with Muriel, where she's more in line with her father and being the faithful, which I'm interested to see how that's going to play out with Pharazôn. But
I
yeah,
can see it now. Pharazôn finds a way to take over, and when Galadriel thinks it's the ships coming to help, it's actually the ships coming to fight them. Like I could see that happening.
Well, I don't. That would be interesting if they actually attack the elves. I hope they don't.
I mean, because I don't know how they're going to convince us that they think they can reach Valinor.
Well, Valinor is the other way from the elves, so.
I know, but they know where elves are in Middle Earth, so they might fight the elves in Middle Earth. They have not yet talked. I'm just saying that I could see that happening.
I hope not. That would be weird.
Here is the Antana moment.
Okay.
Anta moment.
Anta moment.
One, while Muriel and Elendil are embracing or, leaning on each other, Elendil, Antimo comes down and goes, "We can say land." And he goes, "Oh, sorry." And he backs out awkwardly, up the stairs.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Yep. And that's it.
See, I was thinking because he just wants to help everybody and he's got a heart of gold. And this is something we don't see. It happens off screen, but he and Muriel in their time on the ship, these are like the survivors. They bonded a little bit.
Okay.
And so he's actually down there and he's helping her.
Oh.
He's helping her walk and figure out the steps. And then when Elendil comes down, he's like, "Oh, clearly, I'll give you two a moment."
Okay, wait. I see that, and I raise you because Valandil, we see him a couple times, but he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he's just walking on the deck of the ship.
But instead, we see them have breaking down about Isildur.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And Valandil goes, "I guess you're my best friend now."
I'm gonna name my son after you,
or something, because he did say to Isildur, "You are my best friend," and it broke Antimo's heart.
Right.
It broke his heart.
Mm-hmm.
It broke my heart for Antimo.
He's been promoted. He's been promoted to best friend.
It's bittersweet.
And then he says, "I don't know what I would have done if I lost you too."
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well, anyway, they come back to shore. The person says very callously, "We can see Numenor," and it's like, "Hello, don't you know your queen can't see it?"
Right. They keep saying that. It's like, all right.
It's really rude. And then they come into the harbor with Black Flag, the band playing.
Yeah, it's just playing the Numenor theme.
They're radical punk. And it's clear that Tar Palantir has perished.
Yeah. And I love how the Black Flag has because the sun is an important symbol in Numenor that we've seen on various things. And so the Black Flag of mourning is like an eclipsed sun. Very cool.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Very cool. Because it's black and then it's got the white outer ring. So it's like an eclipsed sun.
So emo. So goth.
Oh, yeah.
So what a goth moment. So I think it's time to move on to our Harfoot. Our Harfoot fringe. The show pretty much opens with it, right? We see the rain happening.
Yep. We get our sad boy stranger all on his own, just kind of lying in the rain.
And one of the images we got released before the episode was Nori with that light blue eye.
So creepy.
Which she already has those piercing baby blues. So it was a really good deception. It was a really good use of that actress's visage. But people were like, "Oh crap, Nori got touched and turned." Which I was trying to think. I was like, "Oh, is that what happens? Like, do they make Nori into like fold them into one of the three or whatever. But what we realized is because they took the acorn, which you pointed out, that blonde person was able to shapeshift into Nori, which is why later on she's able to shapeshift into the stranger because she grabs his apple. I think that's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. You need some kind of totem or item.
Just like how the leaf woke up the Balrog, because you need something to give us the reason to go for the camera to follow.
Sure.
To actually, you know what I mean?
There's motivation for the camera, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what happened.
No, it's not what happened. It is exactly what happened. So,
Jesus,
poor Lord Sauron is.
Well, I do want to say one thing. I think it's like I was very much like, oh, he hasn't ate the apple yet, because he's like holding like, how long has it been? It's probably been like a couple days.
A day.
Yeah, and he's just like, oh,
a day and a half, 2 days. It's been over 24 hours.
This is like the last thing Nori gave me. I'm gonna save it. Like, I thought that was cute.
It's sad.
And then he never gets to eat it.
Heart.
He never gets to eat it.
No, but he gets his apple at the end of the day, and he eats it too, metaphorically.
Just like the leaf. Metaphorically.
Okay. I'm saying it was a visual metaphor.
I think we need a whole episode after we do the season recap on just that one Balrog scene, so we can really hash this out.
Okay, we'll go. As opposed to the Lord of the Rings minute, we'll do the Lord of the Rings second and do that second by second. We'll do that whole scene second by second.
Yes.
Frame by frame.
Frame by frame.
So the three... What is it? I think the
ascetic,
the nomad,
and
the other one. I don't know. They because they never talk. We don't know their name.
They were in the X-ray and in the subtitles, but I can't remember the third one.
Is there any are those names sort of familiar to you? Are they brand new? Okay.
Do you
have any idea who they might be?
So this is let's do the breakdown, and when I get to the part where I had thoughts on their identities beyond what we know, we'll talk about that.
Okay, cool.
But let's go chronologically. So they, as you said, like they are like, we're here to serve you, Lord Sauron. Dun dun dun. And then they're talking to him. And they're explaining who he is. You know, you come from the stars, but you have power over them and power over the earth. And the more your power awakens, the more the veil on your mind will weaken, placed there by those who like cast you down. So what I'm wondering is like, who do they think like how accurate?
Who cast Sauron down in their mind?
Obviously, we come to learn that they're mistaken, right? But are they just mistaken about the identity of the stranger, or are they also mistaken about the fact that Sauron was like cast down? Like why, because this is a question we don't get an answer to. What has Sauron been up to? Like,
right.
Which we'll get to this, him just getting on a raft. Put a pin in that. So we get this, and we get the hermit's hat reveal, which I'm sure they're going to do something with. It's a wizard's hat. See, because he's a wizard. And they're like, this, where the stars are strange, east in Rune. So they're going to take him east, which is a place we know Sauron did stuff and, rallied forces. So we may see Sauron in Rune.
I know nothing about Rune, so I feel like that would be a good
There's not much to know.
But I mean, they talk about it in the trilogy. They mention it.
We know pretty much nothing about Rune.
Gotcha.
So I think it's cool. It's like a blank slate. They can just kind of do whatever with it. All we know is that the Blue Wizard, one or two of the Blue Wizards, depending on the story, went there and did stuff. Either went and helped mitigate Sauron's influence over them, and so helped the free peoples of Middle-earth, or in one version, one of the wizards or both of the wizards like failed and like became corrupted and became like evil magic users and
Got it.
So yeah, who knows what they're gonna do? It's a blank slate, so it's cool. But we get the first name drop of Rune. But I mean, anyone who knew the stuff knew we were going there, right? We're the place where the stars are strange. It's one of the things we get about Rune. So, and then we see the stranger. He's like into this. He's like, yeah, Dark Lord, yeah, ruler.
No, he
power.
did not.
Yeah, he was like, like he was when he.
No,
was,
I think he was scared.
Oh, I thought he was kind of like the look in his face. He was kind of like, yeah, and like you know,
no.
That was kind of the. Okay.
I disagree.
Okay.
I forgive me. Who am I to tell you how you interpreted things, whether it's incorrectly or incorrectly? But
that was not the reading you had.
It's not the reading I had. I felt like they were feeding him this energy, and so it was almost like they were puppeting him to get to that place.
Okay.
It's kind of did not feel like once he was like, oh yeah, I'll be this guy, sure, hot chicks, let's go. I did not get that impression.
I saw in his face as he was like kind of the wind was stirring up when they were getting more intense, kind of a like ooh,
sure,
and like yeah, like I'm an evil lord.
I think it could, if you did catch that, it could also just be like, oh, I see my power, like kind of just an awareness of that. I guess it didn't jive for me. But yeah, so we see when that happens, he passes out.
Yeah,
or they knock him out.
The ascetic like blows smoke in his face, and he's like, and he faints, and then they're like, tie him up. He's not ready for his full power.
And then they kill Sadek.
We're just jumping right to that. Well, first the one, like this was weird, a weird moment where the one that we can't, what was it, Nomad Ascetic? I don't know which one it was. The one with the helmet, like as they say.
Oh, that's the Nomad.
Yeah, so she like, as they're like tie him up, she like looks back at the Ascetic and just gives like a like a slight eyebrow raise of like, yeah, you know what we're gonna do. And I thought that was such a weird moment.
Why?
It read like what? Why would that be the look you give when you're about to do like, instead of like a concerned like there's other people here, because clearly they see that the Harfoots are there and they're communicating.
I don't think they're threatened by them.
Yeah, it was just it was a weird.
Well, it also threw us for a loop for what the plan was. I didn't put it together that the blonde one morphed into Gandalf. You know what I mean?
The stranger.
Gandalf.
We'll have that discussion.
And then, but so like it kind of like took me by surprise when it wasn't him for a second. So I think that's probably the direction. Yeah,
they want to leave it vague. So yeah, then the ascetic shapeshifts. They tie them up, and the Harfoots are like, oh, they're tying them up. Now's their chance. There's only two of them. The
ascetic isn't the shapeshifter, by the way. I don't believe.
Oh,
the ascetic is the other one that talks. I don't know what the name for
the shapeshifter one is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, whatever their names are, I can't remember.
I don't think you should, because they're not literally named.
Yeah, they never get named on screen in dialogue. So what happens? Oh, they distract the other two. They go to untie the stranger, and then surprise. As you said, Sadek gets knifed. That was tough.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was not easier the second time around either.
No. Yeah, it never gets easier. But, he did say, well, we're all going to die anyway, so.
He did say that. You know what? Now I feel less bad.
He was half right, I suppose. So then we get this fight sequence. The stranger comes in to save the Harfoots.
Alex, this was some of the best graphic work, practical fight sequencing, most believable wizard drawn battle I've ever seen since The Two Towers.
Well, it's not in that movie, but okay.
Which one is it in?
It's in Fellowship.
Oh, since the Fellowship.
We literally just read that in the book.
I know, but I forgot that he comes. I conflated. I forgot.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this show is known for aping stuff from Peter Jackson trilogy, and they decided to ape the worst part. Oh my god. So we get like, and I'm
like one Google reveals that.
I'm fine with magic fighting, but they like it just, and maybe this is just me, but it took me out. I was like, when we have the one we can't remember the name of with the staff, the shapeshifter. I guess that's what we'll call it, the shapeshifter.
Sure.
And she does the same thing where she like has the staff and then yoinks the stranger up, and then he like goes horizontal and is kind of like hanging there. And now, granted, thankfully they didn't do the full spin.
Oh
move.
My god! You mean with the
and she wasn't dual wielding staffs like Saruman was in the film. But it was just like, why did you reference this part of the Peter Jackson trilogy?
What is the physics of I'm going to turn you to the right, now I'm going to turn you to the left? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, physics, who cares? It's magic, but...
No, I'm saying, like, why?
Yeah, because it's, I guess, visually representative of a struggle, but I just wish they had gone a different route, because it just brought up those memories of that part of the films for me, and I don't like that. Now, maybe some people were like, yeah, they're doing the thing like in Fellowship of the Ring with Gandalf and Saruman, and they love that
the thing
scene.
I really bought and really looked amazing. And
yeah, and like I guess part of it for me is coming from the book. Like, it's just totally different than, and not into just, oh, that's an adaptation and an interpretation. It's like, no, totally different, and betrays kind of how that scene between Gandalf and Saruman goes down. But I don't want to litigate that. But I just, for me, them referencing that was not good. So I was kind of taken out. But I mean, and there were other moments that were a little weird to me, like when the look on the shapeshifter's face when she like is like on the ground. The shot that was like in some of the trailers. She has the staff,
when
and then she like looks up and gasps, and then there's like the music hit. I'm like, what are we supposed to be thinking she's feeling? Because it was like it was kind of like she was like amazing.
Visually it's beautiful.
Yeah, but it didn't fit the moment, because this is after, the stranger like does the blast, right? He does his, move, the one move he knows, the one thing he's learned. And then it's funny. Like, it's not like a look of, oh, I can't believe you did that to me. And it's not like a look of, oh, dang, like, okay, you're fighting back. It's like a look of wonder. And it didn't, for me, it didn't fit the way they were kind of characterizing these characters. It was just, it was unsettling, and like, I was confused. Again, one of the many moments in this episode, I kind of went, what's happening right now?
Right. It was fine. I mean, I rewatched it, and I could see it's got drama, and it's got a visually interesting look to it. It's just a weird take that they decided to use.
Yeah. I do love the actor playing the shapeshifter, though. Her like movement is like so creepy. Just like anytime she's walking, it's like it's very creepy. The actor Daniel Wayman, like when he's the stranger, or when he's playing like the shapeshifted stranger, and he's like walking like her, and then she casts on the cloak. That was creepy. Really cool. So
totally good.
There's cool stuff. So you asked about there's a couple things in this fight scene specifically. I guess there's one more thing before we get to the end of it. So the shapeshifter goes over and she's about to like finish off the stranger, and then the Harfoots like throw rocks. I love that moment. It's great. And she's like, "What?"
It's perfect.
And
it's
then
perfect.
I can't tell who it is. One of them grabs the staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they've distracted the shapeshifter, and they're all about to get roasted. And then Nori goes with the staff, and this is a part that I'm gonna nitpick a little bit.
Okay.
Is she holds it out to the stranger and is like, "Just take it. We need you." As if she's like, "All right, cool." Like, how does she know that he could like use this staff and that's gonna be the key to unlocking his power? And not just like, why isn't she in this moment just kind of like, "All right, like wake up, stranger," but she specifically is like, "Take the staff. Like, we need you. Like, if you hold this up, it will be the solution and you'll obviously win." It was weird to me.
Sure.
Like, how does she intuit that? I mean, just like she intuits the cultists are like, after him, and like she just knows these things, I guess, intuitively.
She definitely is a empath to begin with. She just is. And she saw how they were using the staff, I think. And so she might have thought, I bet you he could do this too. I could see that. I can see it. It didn't. Of all the things that pinged for me, that didn't. And she gets a little bit of a pass because of her empathy, her empathicness.
It wouldn't have bothered me as much had that not been. And like everything else in that conversation, I love where it's like, he's like, "I'm going to hurt you again." She's like, "No, you're good. Like, I know you're here to help. Like, you choose by what you do," and like inspires him. I love all that stuff. I'm going to nitpick. And I wouldn't care as much if when he grabs the staff, it doesn't end up just then being like, "Oh, you remember a lot of," he doesn't remember everything. And like, his
no, I don't think that's where he remembered anything. I think they had already awoken it in him.
No.
Yes.
The
staff didn't awaken more.
If you watch the scene before, and here's the tell, before, like when he's talking to Nori, like on the ground,
mm-hmm.
And he's like, "I'm going to hurt you again." He's talking with the Harfoot Irish accent. And then when he has the staff and he stands up, he's talking not with that accent, and he's like, "Go back to the shadow." So it like when he grabs that staff, he becomes more powerful. And then
it could have been sense memory, though.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. So like it wouldn't have bothered me as much where she's like, "Just take the staff," if like that wasn't the thing that was just like, "Oh yeah, now instantly he's like A, more powerful, and B, a thing that helps move."
does help them wield their power, focus
for sure
to begin with. And
I'm agreeing there, yeah.
And you might forget something, but physically he remembers who he was because he's holding a staff.
Yeah.
It's not dissimilar from him also like going intrinsically knowing, I could put my hand in this pool of water and I will heal myself.
The problem I have is not that when he gets the staff, that stuff happens. The problem I have is Nori's the one who's like, "Take the staff." Like, he doesn't know to take the staff.
Right.
Like, and so it's like, why... Why does he know? Like, find a better reason for him to, grab the staff and then unlock his powers than just Nori telling him to do it. Because how does she know he needs to do that?
Right.
Like, how does she know that's the solution? Like, she would just be like, help us. Like, why would she be like, and take the staff that I know is the thing that will unlock your powers? Because no one tells her that. The cultists don't say that. Like, how would she know? She just knows. And that bothers me. There's probably a way you can make that happen. I'm not a writer, so I don't know. But
I mean, you could have had the fight sequence be different, where they're fighting over the staff together.
Yeah,
and then when he grabs it, he goes, "Wait, I know how
but and again, it's like, because I like the beat with Nori and the stranger where she's saying like, you got to choose, like, it's what you do, and so I think they just didn't know how to have that, and then also get him the staff. But because of that, then you have Nori just having this knowledge about, like, take the staff so you can help us. It's like, okay. Anyway, he takes the staff. He's like, go back to the shadow. And then they're like, oh, crap. he's not Sauron. He's the other one, the Istar. He is, and then he cuts him off before they say his name ostensibly.
They go, he is good.
And then he goes, yeah, exactly. I'm good, which I like the I'm good because that's been his arc for season 1.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
But
it's not surprising that his name is Gandalf and that he says the G.
It's not definitive. I think I'm leaning towards Gandalf, but let's talk about that. Talk about that.
Let me ask you a question about the gals as they dissipate.
Okay.
First, I just want to ask you that question.
Sure.
And then we'll
talk about identity. Yeah.
Correct. A, the moth, what the hell?
Yes.
B, they look like what we think, what we get to see in Peter Jackson's Tolkien adaptation, what the men, the ring wraiths look like. Are these future ring wraiths? Why do they look like that?
I am confused. I don't know.
Okay.
At first I was like, oh, these are just like cultists and maybe they're magic users. There's some theories that like we'll get more into identity, but there's some theories that we're seeing like the blue wizard story with this wizard. The Astari, and that maybe one of the other, like maybe there's another blue wizard out there who's like taught people magic, because that's goes with the story of like them defecting and starting these magic cults. There are a couple moments that lead me to believe they want us to think these are like wraith-like creatures. Because when Sadok, we didn't talk about this, but Sadok like has a moment where he stabs the nomad in the foot. Mm-hmm. And when she screams, it's like not a human scream. It's like a monster kind of wraith scream. Mm-hmm. And we get that also, I think, when the stranger is like about to use his thing and one of them is like, no, right? So that leads me to believe, okay, yeah, these aren't human.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I mean, they also don't move humanically.
Yeah, especially the shapeshifter one. Like she's, like monster-like. So
I just didn't know. I don't think he has wraiths yet, but they obviously exist in both parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, there are
the unseen and the seen.
Yeah. Yes.
Just like Glorfindel, right? Like he has light around him, and these guys definitely exist on both planes in one way or another, as is being insinuated.
I think that's what they're implying, like, because it seems to be like he, like the wizard, the stranger has like almost revealed their true forms or something.
Yeah.
And then is
cast them out.
Yeah.
I don't think he killed them. It would be great if he did, but I think he cast them out.
Yeah, so
I think the moth is unusual, but it has to mean something symbolically.
I don't know. It's weird. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if what that brought up for you.
Yeah, I mean, other than the in the films like the Moth Gandalf connection, if they're trying to hammer that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the only thing it brought to mind to me.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, are these? If they're wraiths, like I don't know. I don't know.
I don't hate the wraiths having a couple of women. I don't hate that. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, if I'm not a betting man. If I was, I would say at least one, if not more, of the ring wraiths will be women.
What are you saying? Women are susceptible to corruption?
100%.
Yeah, totally. You're right. All right, let's talk about the good. Gandalf the good.
So before we move on to identity, one more thing is that I just also love how conveniently when he banishes them or destroys them, the staff disintegrates too.
The staff goes away.
Yeah.
I know, it's so dumb.
It's very dumb.
It was so dumb.
It's like such a tropey cliche thing of like, we need to have a thing where he unlocks his thing, but we can't have him like do everything yet because we have to have season 2. So I guess it just disintegrates. Oh no, he can't use it anymore. Like, it's very dumb.
I completely agree with you. It was so silly. Yeah. So now Gandalf, capital G, good.
Well, I think So to wrap up with the stranger, I guess, before we talk fully about the identity, because there are a couple other things that happen that I think could tie into what his identity is. They're back at the camp. He's talking to Nori. He's like, I got to go to Rune. I think I'll discover more about myself there. And then we get the explanation of what Istar means. It says, in your tongue, it means wise one or wizard. For anyone who didn't get it, they just explicitly say it means wizard. And then at the end of the goodbye sequence with Nori, which we'll talk about in a second, he's like, when in doubt, always follow your nose, which is paraphrasing from the book, pretty much a direct quote from the film version of Gandalf. So they're referencing the sequence in Moria when he gets lost and forgets the way to go. And then he's like, oh, this smells not as bad this way. Let's go this way. So I think I don't want him to be Gandalf. I think they've drawn so many connections to Gandalf with him that it seems likely that he is. However, if we look at the wizards we know, it's like Saruman, Radagast, and Gandalf. Mm-hmm. We don't know much about Radagast, and we don't see much of Saruman. So
I don't think this is Saruman.
No, I'm just talking about like what. Yeah,
I think this, with what little I know, is we're seeing pre-Gandalf the Grey, or he just became Gandalf the Grey, or he's again like if he's pre-Gandalf the Grey, that doesn't mean he is actually Gandalf in this era, and he could still. So if I'm taking my example of understanding where Gandalf dies, quote unquote, to the Balrog and comes back as Gandalf the White, we could be seeing him in a previous iteration before Gandalf the Grey right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
that's
that yeah, doesn't mean he dies at the end of this.
Well, I mean, something happens. He either doesn't and wakes up.
That'd be weird. I think.
Okay.
I think that would be weird. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong about like this being Gandalf and
well, because you said that Gandalf isn't here in the Third Age. They could be
correct.
Also just changing that. But
changing a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. If it's Gandalf, it's a divergence from what is in the books. Gandalf also specifically says he's never been to Rune. So
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't get to Rune.
Where are they going then?
I don't know.
No, I think if it's Gandalf, they're just changing that about his character, and it's basically going to be like, it's Gandalf the Blue, because it's like Gandalf, but he's like, it's the blue wizard stuff, right? The wizards in the East, right? So they're just making it Gandalf because people know that name, which I guess is fine. Yeah, they've dropped so many like things that are connections to Gandalf. I would think it is. And if they don't do it, I'd be surprised, but I'll be happy. And I don't think they'll. I just don't. I think they'll probably continue to drop little hints and connections. I don't think we're not going to get the name Gandalf.
I agree.
Maybe at the very end is like a wink and a nod of like, and it was Gandalf the whole time, for those who didn't know.
Gandalf, my name is Gandalf. Oh, yes, people called me that before.
What I would love is like if we get throughout the seasons, not that I think their storylines can intersect with anybody, but I would love to see if it does intersect with the elves and the dwarves and the men, is like we get to see him get named by like all of them.
That's fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. But yeah, it's probably Gandalf, and I'm disappointed.
Whatever. Get over
it. Let's talk Harfoots. We get...
Do we have to?
I mean, we get a very long melodramatic goodbye sequence.
Here's all I want to talk about.
Okay.
Poppy should have gone with her. And I saw a tweet that said, if this is Gandalf, does he insist that Sam goes with Frodo in the future because he's regretful of not having Poppy come with Nori this time?
I mean, he was hands off here. He was standing on that hill for a long time just looking.
Yeah, he really was. Also, like, did he know she was going to come? You know?
Yeah, that was a thing, because, like, he was just standing there, like, after they already said goodbye, and then Nori's, like, again, this is very nitpicky. Nori's down in the Harfoot camp.
Yeah, no, I noticed that.
And he's just, like, still standing, like, he hasn't left yet. He hasn't crested that hill and just, like...
Goodbye. Thanks for the apple.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's got really good hearing, and he's like, oh, they're making her leave. Let me wait a second. Yeah, so... what are they gonna do with now that we just have the Harfoots minus Nori?
I don't think we're gonna see them that much.
But then why?
I really don't.
Like, yeah, I hope not, because it's like, what the hell are they gonna be doing? They kind of set up Poppy to be like, all right, she's gonna take leadership because Malva clearly doesn't know Jack. Not good at reading maps. So Poppy, it seems, will be taking a leadership position now that Sadok is gone. But, like, why do we... look, Largo, what's the mom's name? I'm blanking. Terrible. Marigold, yes. Largo, Marigold, and Poppy, like, cool characters, but do I really need to see, like, do I care about them as much as Nori and the Stranger? I don't think so. And again, we talked about, like...
I don't think we're going to see them again until they cross paths.
Yeah, I just don't think so. Weird. It's just weird.
I think it was the setup to get to know Nori's character. You know, there's a world where they come back and something very bad happens to the Harfoots, you know. But, and that's something we could talk about next episode.
Yeah.
But I just think this was meant to set off Nori onto this adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the misstep was not having Poppy go along, which probably only happened so that in the future seasons, there's a reason for Nori to go back to the Harfoots.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's like, well, my best friend's here.
Right.
Yeah, I also love how Nori has a sister. Like, she doesn't even say goodbye to her sister.
I actually did clock that as well,
Dilly
too.
is just, like, there. Like, oh, she's in the middle of the hug. Yeah, it's like, why'd you make, like, what's the point of the sister? I guess to almost get killed. And that's it. Yeah, and then we get the Poppy, like, giving her the, like, oh, yeah, bye. Like, I don't want to. I want to talk to you. Sad. And then the slow-mo run and hug. And we get the secret handshake with Largo and Nori, but not the mom.
Mm-mm. It's because she's not blood.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know.
But yeah, and then we see the Harfoots leaving, and then we see the Stranger and Nori going. And I also thought it was funny that with the line, "When in doubt, follow your nose." Look, I get Nori being like, I don't know which way to go. But literally, they're going to a place called Rune, which just means east.
Oh.
So I'm kind of like, what do you mean you don't know which way to go? You go east.
I mean, he might not know that. That might not have been downloaded via the staff.
Right. Yeah, he can't tell which direction east is.
Well, no, he didn't. Maybe he doesn't remember what Rune means.
I guess.
That would be my only assumption. They didn't explicitly say Rune, the town to the east.
It's not a town. It's a whole region of the world. That is just.
I'm just saying they didn't say that. They didn't say anything that would give him a sense of direction.
I guess maybe I'm bringing my own knowledge.
He didn't even know that he was a wizard until she reminded him that Ishtar was a thing. Whatever. So I'm with you. It's silly.
Yeah.
But it is silly for sure.
Can we come back to Eregion?
Oh, that's the whole thing we've been doing this whole time.
Okay.
Is getting back to Eregion.
Okay. Because we didn't even talk about. So okay, let's go through blow by blow some of the stuff we haven't covered. They ride up, and again we're gonna be nitpicky because I love to be nitpicky.
Yep. Because you and I both clocked this.
Yeah, so they ride up. I mean, Elrond briefly says to Celebrimbor, or they're talking, and Celebrimbor's like, "If only we could do more with less." Foreshadowing,
which is really dumb that he doesn't know that as a great metal worker.
Oh, like the whole. Well, we'll get to the conversation with him.
I can't even.
Yeah, that's a little bit like. Galadriel, Halbrand ride in, and to the shock of Elrond, he's like, "What, Galadriel?" And she's like, "Get him medicine. He was stabbed.
Fix my boyfriend.
Okay. My future king.
Come on.
My king. He was stabbed 6 days ago. Now, I was wondering, how long are they going to address the time? They're coming from Mordor. So, here's the timeline. He got stabbed. I think it was...
Lanced,
sure. Self-inflicted.
100%.
Yeah. So it was probably a day, right, for the wound to like fester, and like a day between the time they rode and he had been stabbed by the side of the road, right? So if he was stabbed 6 days ago, that means they left 5 days ago, I'm assuming, roughly. Now I looked this up. I have a book. It's the Atlas of Middle-earth. It is
the dorkiest thing you own.
Yes, it's an essential tool in every Tolkien fan's bookshelf. It is, by the way I measured it, this is approximate, like 650-ish miles from where they are. And we don't know exactly like where they are in the Southlands.
Because they also did like move outward of the...
Yeah. And I measured from a pretty far north point, like in Mordor, right? So they could have been further south and then it would have been longer.
You were being generous.
I was being generous. The most generous interpretation. 650-ish miles if they're going like through the Gap of Rohan, which is the quickest way to get to Eregion, right? Going that way through the instead of like over the Misty Mountains. Why would you do that? So that means they're traveling like over 100 miles a day on horseback with a wounded man. Granted, he could probably be totally fine and ride, but they don't know that yet.
Oh yeah, he's totally pretending.
And now I looked this up, like real life horses, if they're in like the fittest condition, can travel 100 miles a day.
Real life horses can?
If they're like top of their, class.
Okay.
But 5 days without rest for a horse would be, you got to rest your horses, right? So, like, I guess the most generous you could be with this, and again, we're being nitpicky, but is they're Númenorian horses, so they might be of better stock than, like, our modern-day horses. And you do have Galadriel, Norolim, just saying Norolim over and over.
Over and over and over again. Sure, totally.
And it goes slow-mo every time she says it, Norolim. So the most generous interpretation of like, all right, they got really good horses and they got an elf who can like talk to the horse and be like, all right, come on, like we'll rest in like a day, just like, push yourself. Maybe, but like why did you address it at all? Just have them get there. Because
if they didn't, we would have questioned it. Everyone would have.
I wouldn't have. I would have been like, it's fine. They just got there. I don't care. But the fact, here's where I question it. I question it when they say 6 days, and I go, does that make sense? I'm going to figure out if 6 days makes sense. And I did, and maybe it does a little bit if you're being very generous. So it's not, look, I'll say it's not implausible. It's not implausible, but it's on the cusp. It's on the cusp. And I wouldn't have cared if they would have just, like, gotten there and been like, he was wounded, get him medicine. Because, like, who cares if it's been 6 days? Like, just have it happen. Anyway, that's my rabbit hole I went down.
And it was weird to me too, because I was like, wait, how come it? I know that it takes them a long time on the feet to get to Mordor from, Rivendell, then Eregion, etc. But
yeah, they're also going a very different way,
circuitous route,
because they talk about going through the Gap of Rohan, and that would be faster, ostensibly, but or potentially easier. But they're like, well, Saruman, we don't know what's going on with Rohan and Saruman, so we can't go that way, which is why they have to go through the Misty Mountains, and anyway. Okay, so Galadriel and Elrond sit down for a chat, because clearly they have a lot of catching up to do. And we get some interesting things happening here. A promise that Elrond makes conveniently, where he's like, you know what? I didn't trust you then, but I won't.
I'm going to have blind faith
I won't make
from
that mistake again.
out.
And then, that won't come up later. Don't worry about it. For reasons. And then Galadriel saying, I did not cross that bitter ocean only to drown now, nor will I let you. So she's basically saying, like, look, I got your back, Elrond, which I like. I like that moment. And that will, like, inform, I think, some of her motivations later on, but there's still questions with the ring stuff. I don't like the line where Elrond's like, what do we do now? And then she's like, the only thing we can do, swim.
Oh, it's
very cheesy. Because, like, I got the metaphor about drowning.
Shut up.
Like, you don't need to hammer it on. It was a little mad.
It was, I agree.
Wink at the camera after she says swim. Like, get it? I will say, like, one of the things I do like about this show is the writers are doing a good job of having these visual elements that, like, connect everything together. And I like that. But there are then moments when they really hit you over the head with it. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You don't have to be so obvious. So like sometimes they do it a little bit too much. Like with the we'll talk about the dream sequence in a bit, but with the reflection, love it. I love that moment. It's a great visual moment, and that's like well done. But it's like since episode 1, we've been seeing all that stuff. So, okay, Halbrand and Celebrimbor.
The only so now, I just want to point it out really quickly when Halbrand comes to talk to Galadriel by the side of the Glanduin. He has something around his neck. Did you clock that?
It's similar to Waldreg's.
The Haldrag ship has sailed.
Oh man, yeah. I was wondering where he got that.
I think it's his. Like, I think he made it. I think it's the Sauron thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a sign that you're a follower of Sauron.
Oh man. Yeah, because we haven't seen that on any other characters, right?
No, I don't think so. Not explicitly.
I guess that makes sense because he is a smith. He could have just made it in a second.
Sure.
It's a little project he did as kind of a wink.
Sure.
I like it.
They've been there for a few
days. Because I did
days,
clock
weeks,
that,
whatever.
but I didn't make the connection.
I mean, so it's going to break Celebrimbor's heart when he finds out he's betrothed to another man.
He's got a man back home.
Ugh, but, who cares? They're just...
Look, you were the one who, during this Halbrand Celebrimbor scene, you were like, the sexual tension.
It is the hottest scene, even hotter than Arondir and Bronwyn kissing. I'm telling you, he is boosting Celebrimbor's ego so good. It is sexy to watch. Because, Celebrimbor is like, like he is playing it so well.
Like the great Celebrimbor, and Celebrimbor's like, well, yes, he's here. He's here right now. Let me show you. And he pulls the rope and just opens up the ceiling. Like,
he acted it perfectly, and I don't think they were trying to be like, hey, they're falling in love right now. But I do think the goal of the scene was let's watch Celebrimbor be entranced or charmed by him. And because we also needed to believe that happened quickly.
Well, and this
when they
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you forget it. You had to interrupt me.
This was the moment I knew. All right,
that he was
Sauron.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry that it took you so long. I did want to mention that one of our friends of the podcast, Geek with Shields, says I was right. I knew he was Sauron from the beginning. It was a pretty good finale. Never really bought the misdirect. Too many ways it didn't make sense. They also said really curious about Rune. So anyway, I just think I'm really questioning your intelligence to not accept that this was Sauron so soon.
Do we get into it?
Here's why we have to. Because there's a couple implications that they're making with Galadriel bringing him into Eregion and being his friend. And they aren't good things that the writers were trying to give us a redemption arc or a manipulation arc or what have you. Like they were trying to, they can't legally use the name Anatar because it's not part of the appendices.
I think it is.
I think it's not because I read tweets about
Okay.
it, but apparently everyone's like, don't expect Anatar to be mentioned.
We just had the Anatar plotline in not even a full episode, so yeah, they've burned that. There's no reason for the name Anatar to come up anymore.
This was before.
Sure.
Don't expect, people were saying on Twitter, don't expect Anatar, the name, to be mentioned. There is an argument, and there are people who are making this argument, and not wrongfully so, that Galadriel scorned him into this path because they find each other. That's a good question. It's like, how do they find each other? Why was he looking for her? Because here's the thing. Yeah. I told you, Alex, he killed those people without, he probably were figments of her imagination. They probably weren't even real people, but he let them die on the ocean to that sea snake. And that's a bad person move. They didn't heal his sores on his mouth, and that's a bad person thing. Like, he says he's sorry for the brother.
Yes.
And they talk about the past. And
he says he's got great evil in his past.
And he's really copping to a lot in a sense. And when they're fighting together, which I'm willing to concede in this moment, it wasn't a romance thing.
Yeah.
He was truly
getting a glimpse of the
moved.
Future.
No, he was, yes, but he was moved by her empathy.
Yes, exactly.
Her pity.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously he likes power, and obviously he's not able to remove the ruling stuff from what he wants to do that's good, which is what we learn. But I do think he saw the potential of being better next to her. And I think there's context in some of Tolkien's writing that the only elf he did think highly of was Galadriel.
The elf he feared the most.
The elf he feared the most. By the way, I said it on a tweet. I'm saying it now. I don't think anyone else has said it. His name was literally Halbrand, folks. He branded Finrod's skin.
Yep.
It's a thing, and it was right there, right in front of us.
Anyway, agree with everything you just said.
I'm saying let me round out the thought. And this is the issue. He wanted to stay in Numenor. He did not want to go.
Well,
hold on. He did not want to go. She ham-fisted him to do it. She twisted his arm. She emotionally manipulated him to going. In that conversation where he said, I'm sorry for all of it. And do not have pity for me. That won't quench my whatever. She does not go, thank you. She bites at him immediately. If he in fact planned to use Galadriel this entire time to get to Mordor and then Eregion, we would never have seen the moment of private reflection where he's sitting there looking at this pouch that he stole from a dead man's body and go, should I do this? Should I not? It would have never happened.
Yes. here is where, like, I agree with everything you just said. The signs are there. However, there are big problems well, we know it now that it is. There are big...
Well, I'm not saying this is problematic or good. I'm just saying that it's really questionable, and they set up Galadriel's role in this to be really bad.
What do you mean?
By rejecting him, she made him worse. There's a way you can look at it that way.
But when she rejects his offer in this episode?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting read. It can
look that way.
Yeah, so here are my thoughts. Yes, all the signs were there, but the problems are, I think that's a really good one you just said, where when we're seeing Halbrand just by himself and like, what's he thinking? Like, maybe there's a different reading on that of what's he thinking as Sauron when he's looking at this sigil.
Oh, 100%. He's like, well, should I go back to this world?
Because here's the thing with the whole, like, and especially in this episode when he says, like, well, I wanted to stay in Numenor. You wanted to go. Like, I think that's him manipulating Galadriel.
I agree. That's how it read to me the first round.
Yeah, like I don't think he Sauron wanted to stay in Numenor. He'll want to get there later or stay there later. But I think he wanted to have Galadriel open up to him and have to go through these steps and manipulate her into opening up, because when they have that conversation, they get closer. Because
Alex, he could have killed her numerous times.
He doesn't want to kill her.
Why?
Because the whole conversation they have in this episode, he wants to rule with her.
He doesn't need her.
Yes, he thinks he does, and he wants her. Like, that's...
He wants her, he doesn't need her.
True, but he's not... And that's what I actually enjoy. There are some things I enjoy about it. About this characterization is they are portraying him as thinking he's a good guy and like thinking he has done this repentance that we know Sauron was playing with the idea of at the end of the first age. And so in his mind, he's like, oh, well, if I have Galadriel with me, that will, help legitimize my rule in a way, and help me get what I want. So he's not just like, I'm going to crush and kill everybody. He's the manipulator. He wants to rule and conquer and, have these people under him. So Galadriel is a way to do that. He doesn't just want to go, I'm going to kill all my enemies. Like, because look, then he'd just be like amassing armies of orcs and marching on, Linden and stuff, like, which eventually he'll do. But right now he's not in that stage. So that to me is fine. But here's the problem. Let's say, all right, from the beginning, Sauron is Halbrand, right? His plan is, I'm going to get in with Galadriel. I'm going to manipulate her, right? And then we're going to go and we're going to do the ring thing, right? Because he's been doing the ring thing, right? Because I believe that the corruption, and he even kind of says, like, oh, the shadow will spread over Mordor if you don't let the elves make the rings, so you kind of have to.
Which means he's spreading that shadow.
Yes. So he's behind that.
Which is manipulative. Like, they don't need him. He can just stop doing the shadow.
Exactly. Or at least that's the implication. I mean, anyway, it doesn't quite matter. But so let's say that's his plan, right? What's he doing on a raft in the ocean?
Yep.
Why is he there? From the Southlands, a raft that came, or a ship that came from the Southlands, and he's shipwrecked. Why the hell is he in the middle of the ocean if his plan is, I'm going to find Galadriel and get in with her and manipulate her? Because he doesn't, or then at least tell us, like, how does he know she's, number one, he has to know that she is on a ship to Valinor. Number two, he has to know she's going to jump off the ship at the last moment. Number three, he then has to plot a course of where she's going to swim to so he can meet up with her on the raft. It makes zero sense. And it's the most unforgivable thing of this whole thing, which is why, because when it happened in the episode, You were like, man, why? I don't get this. Why are they meeting up? And I'm like, look, this is a Tolkien thing, a chance meeting. They even say it in the episode. And I was fine with that. I'm fine with two characters meeting, and it's a chance meeting, and then they develop a relationship that ends up becoming important, right? Providence. But it's different when one of those characters is supposed to have had a master plan that involves this random thing occurring that ostensibly they wouldn't have known about, but it was part of their plan. So he didn't know. It was a chance meeting, but also he knew because it was part of his master plan. It makes zero sense. Unless they're going to somehow explain how he knew or what. I don't know. Like it, but it's so bad. It's so bad.
I agree. I do think the implications are interesting. I think we will learn why he was there because we still don't know how Adar came to believe that he killed Sauron.
Right.
And then how those three ladies think they're going to find him. Like, what happened? Where did that happen?
Yeah.
You know, if he was all the way in the north, how come he ended up in the south? Why did he brand all these things? What I think is actually interesting, this is what excites me more than anything. We get more Adar. I really thought we were going to see Adar just be the big bad this season. And all this means that we're just going to get more Adar, which is a good thing.
Because Sauron has to take over Mordor.
It's very exciting. Yeah. So we're going to absolutely learn. I mean, I really hope.
Yeah.
This is something we'll unpack next episode. What role Adar played in divorcing Sauron from a body,
right,
or whatever, and how Sauron got there. And before we do our rewatch, or before we do our recap for next episode, I do want to watch all the episodes again. We'll still release this in time. I just want to kind of give myself one more watch through to kind of see, what did I miss, or where was this, or did, because. You know me. I've said this a couple times. I don't like Ex Machina stuff. I just don't. Anyway, I'm also annoyed that Elrond just finds the scroll and sort of like suspects and takes way too long to walk up the tower to stop them from making the rings.
Again, pacing.
I know.
It's pacing and the way it was edited.
But the ring sequence making was beautiful. Cool. I still think they could have even taken more time with some moments, but what they did do was gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about like just the Galadriel motivation being weird after that. Let's talk about. I want to talk a little bit about the dream sequence kind of thing, because I loved a lot of the things in this moment. In this sequence, in terms of the visuals and
totally
playing upon, we get the flashback to Finrod. We get to see the Finrod actor again, and I loved his performance because
it was so good.
He's playing Sauron, and just the subtleties in his facial expressions, like the smile he gives, that just looks really sinister and evil, and
it got to be, must have been so fun for him as an actor to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And he knocked it out of the park.
Totally. And I like that, where Galadriel's character has come in the Dune episode, especially her having that kind of touching the darkness moment. We see her kind of for a second at peace, right, back in Valinor. But that illusion is soon shattered when Finrod begins to, or Saurod. Can we call him Saurod?
Finron.
Finron, I like that. That's too close to Fingon.
It is a little too close to Fingon.
Fingon! There's so many Finns in the Tolkien elf.
Findaleel.
Findalendil.
Findalendil.
So when he starts to talk about, oh no, Sauron and I had the same goals. It's all good. And then Galadriel is like, no, I can't believe you killed my brother. And then we get to the meat of this dream sequence where it's both of them back on the raft. It's both of them back on the raft, and I really enjoyed that we got some insight into Sauron's character here and some of his motivations. Him being Halbrand aside, I like that they're alluding to this idea that we get in the books that Sauron initially is repentant and wants to, atone, wants to atone for his deeds. And we get some of that in this characterization, which I enjoyed. Love the line where he says, I felt the light of the one again. And I think that just like everything Sauron says, there's some kernel of truth there, but he
knows who he's talking to as well.
Yes, he's attempting to manipulate through his words, and he's speaking half truths, right? I think he really does believe, his way is the best way, but I don't know. He's, I think, clearly appealing to some of what he thinks Galadriel wants to hear with what he's saying. But we also get another allusion here to the books, where he says he will make Galadriel his queen, stronger than the foundations of the earth. Yeah, it comes from when Galadriel is tempted by the One Ring.
I see.
When it comes to her realm in Lothlorien, she gives that same kind of descriptor of herself as a queen.
I can see why some people think that would be a stretch, but but knowing that her characterization, her want is in line with that is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting again to like play with that idea that I think a lot of people were maybe wanting to see, from what I had seen, comments and criticisms of the show, of this isn't really the Galadriel we know from the books, but it's taken her, give it time for her character to develop into that, where she is kind of tempted by this power, and that's what Sauron is doing here. And I think going into what happens after the dream sequence, we're seeing a little bit of that. So we had talked about
seeing a little bit of what
her temptation and desire for power a little bit, because while I still don't quite understand her motivations and what she's thinking about when she's like
not telling him it's Sauron, and
I get those motivations, because we do get the direct threat. We got the veiled threat from Halron when they, she is secretly talking to that historian or the librarian, whoever that character is, the short-haired elf, kind of secretly off to the side, and then he comes up, oh, Celebrimbor, we figured it out, come see, or whatever. And then he says, I can't believe I'm here working with the elven smiths of Eregion, and it's you who saved me, and I won't forget that, and I won't let anyone else forget too. And that's a veiled threat, right?
Well, because he does say that too, like when they're on the raft again.
Yes,
you're the one who made me leave from Valinor, and so like,
yeah, what would they think if they knew you were the reason I was here? So he's kind of blackmailing her, and like, well, you can't really talk about this, because then your friends already are kind of tenuous with your whole jumping ship thing and disobeying the king. So heap this on top of it, that you helped the enemy. Oh, that wouldn't be good. So she does have reason to not say it's Sauron. That I buy. But the whole like, why are you then just doing what Sauron wants? And I think some of it, I guess the most generous interpretation I can give is when she's talking with Elrond and she says, I won't let you drown either. She knows that this is like make or break for not just Elrond and him putting all his sort of influence behind this project happening. He's the one who makes the plea to Gil-galad and the reason it's allowed to continue. But also that...
Which I thought was interesting. And I was like, wait, what's Gil-galad so mad at Elrond about?
Yeah, it is a little bit like he was the one who like...
No, it makes sense though, because upon second thought, he Galad knew he was lying about the mithril, and then
yeah, and he did fail. He did fail in like having the diplomatic relationship there to allow the dwarves to just give them all the mithril. But at the same time, what is it really that harsh of a deadline to where it's like we can't give the little time, just a little bit of time to work on this ring project? Is it really that crazy for Elrond
that now you forgot that you told Elrond to have hope?
Yeah, that was a little bit.
It's a little weird.
That part was a little weird, and just the fact that we get so little Gil-galad, the fact that that's what he's doing in this episode is a little like, but it is kind of in line, I guess, a little bit with him like distrusting Sauron, kind of adjacent to that, because he's not directly, obviously, interacting with Halbrand really.
But I stopped you from your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons that might influence her to be like, no, we have to do the ring thing, even though I know it's Sauron's plan, is because she believes that this is the only thing that will be any hope of saving the elves, and also just helping her friend Elrond, who is, backing this, right? And this is where we also then get to the whole implicit trust thing of just like you set.
Oh, it did bite them in the back.
Yeah, you set this up with Elrond going, I'm not going to make the mistake again, and then so that's why he just doesn't ask any questions about what is all this. So, but yeah, that ties in with, I think, her development of like, we're going to see her become maybe a little more power hungry, a little more, all right, I got to be in the driver's seat, and now that I am directly involved with the ring making, I mean, she's the one who's like, we got to make 3 now, because I think some of that is like, I want one, right? There's 3 of us in this room, I want one. If anyone, because she has that secret, right? She feels like she can't say it's Sauron, and so who else is going to do anything about it if she's the only one burdened with this knowledge now? Well, I need a weapon, or something that could be a weapon, although even the elvish rings aren't really weapons, but power. So that's a little interesting, but again, I'm going to say it again, I think the way it was sort of paced and presented in the episode did leave me a little bit like, what is happening? So
for the whole thing to be titled Rings of Power, it took a long time to get to the rings.
Yeah.
And then they rushed it.
Yeah.
Part of me is like trying to think about like what would they have done differently? What could they have done differently? If they hung their hat on Halbrand being Sauron and not wanting the audience to know that, I don't know how they could have done it another way.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not saying it's good that they put all their chips in on that.
Right.
And that being said, I think giving us the B plot with Radagast, Gandalf, Blue Wizard Boy, I love it. It's magical.
Yeah.
It's giving us the Hobbit touch of things, I think both things made it this episode worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, even though I had some problems with the wizard Harfoot stuff, I'm fine with the inclusion, and again, I think the pacing of that was fine in this episode. It felt like they gave it enough time to breathe, but I think just getting like, if they had been, and again, like, I'm sure it's a tall order juggling all the plots they have to juggle, but I would have liked to see a little bit more time spent. Maybe they somehow find a way to get them to Eregion an episode earlier, and it just doesn't all happen in the one episode. They get there, and then we have a little time with them there, and then the next episode we start to see Halbrand, Sauron manipulating. But yeah, I mean, there was still a lot of good stuff, and I think the meat of the good stuff was in that dream sequence. And if you were to just show me that divorced from the overarching flow of this episode, I'd be like, this is cool, but just
worth the price of entry.
Yes, yeah, there was some really juicy stuff in there, but the way it was presented to me was a little weird.
I think we differ a little bit there, but I can understand. As you know, last episode's pacing really bugged the heck out of me.
Yes.
the second rewatch of episode 8 had me feel a little bit differently. The second rewatch of this episode, it wasn't cringe. Last week was cringe for me. This week, I wasn't disappointed. I was invested and I liked it. There was obviously things. Anyway, what I'm trying to get to, unless there is more to talk about, what overall are your thoughts about this episode?
Before we get to overall thoughts, there was one thing, was that I am intrigued. Like, I would say that, well, no, this is overall thoughts, but it kind of ties in with the way things end in Eregion, with that scene where it's just Galadriel looking at Elrond, Elrond looking at Galadriel, Celebrimbor smiling because he's pleased with himself. It's hard to land a season 1 finale in a way that simultaneously feels satisfying for the arc of the season, yet leaves me wanting to watch season 2. You can do that with maybe like a cliffhanger is kind of okay. You don't get the necessarily the satisfaction, but it amps up the sort of I want to watch season 2. But you also don't want to wrap everything up, because then you're like, well, okay, that's a story complete, right? I'm not necessarily as motivated to watch season 2. This, for me, as a finale, because of the questions I have about just sort of like character stuff with the elves, like I was saying, like I think maybe this is why Galadriel wanted to still go forward with the ring thing. Like, I don't really know where Elrond is standing in all of this with his, like, I guess he kind of knows now, he's suspicious of Galadriel. There was tension there that wasn't good for me in terms of storytelling. Like, it didn't feel like good tension that made me go, oh, I want to see what happens next. It was tension that just left me feeling kind of like unresolved and confused.
Agree with that.
I think they succeeded with that in the Harfoot stuff, where it's like, okay, cool, we got a wrap to the Stranger arc. We know he's good. That was kind of the whole, like, I mean, it's kind of clear he's good, but then they throw in a little twist and we get that resolution. And now it's like, all right, cool, they're going to Rune and like we're going to find out more about the Stranger. That I thought was a good conclusion. And obviously the Numenor stuff I thought was a good
entrance into season 2.
Yeah, because we get the kind of, not necessarily a cliffhanger, but we get like, all right, what we're going to see with Numenor is like death of Tar Palantir, political tension. We're going to start to see the faithful, which they set up very nicely with Elendil and Muriel's conversation. Like, we know for sure it's like, all right, they're on Team Faithful. Our Pharazôn is building his tombs to kings and immortality and stone stuff. So they set that up nicely. We know what those lines are. And then the Arondir Bronwyn, they kind of left that just open. I mean, we know they're going to Pelargir, but what are they?
And we're going to unpack this next episode.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this is overall thoughts of like where I'm thinking about how this ended, right? So, but with the elves in Eregion, and also you said like the Durandisa stuff, we kind of got that last episode. The elf stuff though, and the Sauron stuff, I was like,
It felt very forced.
I don't feel like a good, I want to see what happens next. I feel like I want to see what happens next because I don't really get it. 100%.
I can agree with that. I think we will get answers.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think overall, I think Charlie Vickers is so good.
Yeah.
He's so good.
He's a great actor.
He's going to be a great Sauron. I'm really mad at him. I'm not super betrayed because I knew this was happening.
You called it.
But he's gonna be so hot as Sauron Daddy.
Oh,
he's gonna be
just the little ending bit we got with him staring at Mount Doom with the very stylish black cloak.
Yeah, that he definitely picked up. When Keaton Landfair said he picked up the Mordor Fall collection.
Yeah, he's in his hot fall.
Yeah, hot fall. He got what he wanted.
He did get glammed up, like you were saying this whole season. What's with he doesn't heal. His face is messed up, and we got hot Sauron at the end.
I'm telling you,
all the fans are happy.
The sly signals were there. He let those people die. He had open sores on his face.
It was all there.
It was all there. Well, We've spent so much time talking about this episode. There is so much to talk about still. I think we'll even think about more and talk about it next week. Next week, you and I are going to sit down and look at the whole arc of the season 1 and make our predictions for season 2. I wanted this episode to be just about this episode, and I think that's what we accomplished. So join us in rewatching 1 through 8. Let us know what your thoughts are, if things are starting to make sense for you or like make less sense. We'd love to know what you thought. You can tweet at us or email us your thoughts, and we might mention you on the podcasty. You can email us at podcastoftherings@gmail.com. We're at Twitter. Where are we at Twitter, Alex?
Twitter is at Pod of the Rings. You can also go to patreon.com/Pod of the Rings if you want to support the show and get some goodies along the way. We have some tiers there you can see the incentives for.
Yep. And our poop posting Instagram is just going off. Lots of memes. Oh, yeah. Lots of memes on POTRPOD, Potterpod. Alex, I love talking about this stuff with you. I can't wait to do it next week. And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always so much fun. I am glad that we are on this journey together and with all of the Tolkien fans out there as well.
Totally. Until next time.
May our roads meet again.